We need your support for the Medicine Man Gallery channel, so make sure to click the subscribe button and tap the little bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, which we do every morning on Wednesday and Friday. See you soon. Fascinating interview today with Kevin Kehoe. He is I would like to say a young artist that's just hitting the scene, and part of that's true. He is just hitting the scene, but he's doing it later in life. He ran ad companies as the creative director in major companies, and you're going to love this podcast because you get to follow somebody through their journey in life and how they end up at the end of that journey going, wait a second, I need to do something else. And that something else for him was following a passion he'd always had, which is a painter. And so this is one that's I just will say it's insightful. And we talked for a long time. Listen to the end, because for those of you who are artists, you're really going to find some pearls of wisdom that he has found in his own journey. Kevin Kehoe. All right. So this is what I love about doing a podcast. So an artist that I'd seen your work before. I kind of knew who you were. But all of a sudden you walk into my gallery and you go, hey, I'm here to see your gallery because I like your gallery and I like your artist. I'm a fan of Maynard Dixon. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this guy is fantastic. We need to talk to him on a podcast. And I happen to have a nice little podcast room in the back of my gallery. And Kevin Kehoe is here. So welcome, Kevin.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. It was great to meet you yesterday and absorb the gallery. Yeah, thank you.
No, we talked for like an hour. So that tells you right off the bat, folks, he's going to be interesting. If I can talk to him for an hour and then say, would you come back and talk for another hour? Either I really like his art or I like him or I like both. And in this case, it's both. What drove you to, well, there's so many things. I know a little backstory, but I'm going to start with why come to my gallery? What brought you to my gallery?
Here's the honest answer. A few years ago, before I started painting, or a few years after I started painting, I decided it was time for me to be prepared in case things went well. And so what that meant was make a short list of galleries that in my mind and in my heart, I felt like I would be a good fit for. It didn't mean those galleries wanted me or thought I was worthy.
Right.
It just meant that I wanted to understand where I fit in, if I was lucky enough to fit in. And you were at the top of the list.
Yeah,
so there, top three.
And what makes a good fit in your mind? What was it the qualifications that you were looking for in a gallery? And I ask these questions because I think it's important for other artists who are trying to break into the art world, and you're doing that. You have a lot of training, and we're going to talk about all that. But what was it that you looked for as a person who understood the art world to some extent, I think?
For me, it was really, it's really a taste level, an aesthetic. I can walk into a gallery now. I can be in a gallery probably for a minute. And I know if I could picture my work hanging on those walls and adding to that taste level, enhancing it, enriching it, expanding it, or not being right for it for whatever reason. And so as I came to understand who the painters were that inspired me the most, the living painters, contemporaries, and where they were, it started to make sense to me. Those two things came together, the galleries and the artists who are in those galleries. And like you said, I had never been in here, but I feel like I had, just from doing research and being alert to who's got new work hanging where, and I kind of felt like I knew the gallery even before I walked in.
And was part of that looking on social media and internet kind of my website and things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yep. I think that's important for people to realize too, as gallerists actually out there who might listen to this, is you better well have those things, because if you plan on getting good artists, they're going to look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so I know you're painting, and you've been doing this now for 7 years.
6. I just hit
6
my
years.
6-year mark.
Now he says that, but in the reality is you've been involved in art for a very long time, and I want to find out that backstory, how you got to be where you are today. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in New England, specifically in Connecticut, but I ended up living in several of the New England states. Go Red Sox. So, I grew up with an appreciation of, some of the painters from back east. And I get, how early do you want me to go back?
Oh, no, we want to go back to the beginning. So what did your dad and mom do?
My mom and dad, it's funny, you couldn't meet two people that are further from the art world or an understanding of art than my mom and dad. Now, that said, they were my biggest supporters.
What did they do?
My dad was in the finance end of the car industry. He worked for General Motors Finance Corporation. And his whole life, essentially. It's kind of unheard of now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like 40-something years. My mom was in the insurance industry. She worked most of her time for Travelers Insurance.
So she worked, which is a little unusual for her generation.
Both my parents worked, and they worked hard, and none of that was lost on me. I think I owe my work ethic, something I'm very proud of, to my parents. My dad, I mean, he didn't even have a desk. He would sit on the sofa with his briefcase in his lap, and that was his desk. And he did that every night. He was doing that until I went to bed, and he was still doing it. And I remember that like it's yesterday.
And did he teach you business skills? Because you ultimately ended up needing some very significant business skills. Did some of that come from him?
I think so. Here's what I got from him. I got his tenacity. He started, my parents didn't grow up with a lot of money. In fact, not a lot of money, and couldn't go to college and had to kind of climb up the hard way. And my dad started with General Motors as the repo man. He was the guy that would go retrieve the cars that people couldn't make the payments on. I mean, that's a tough job.
That's a really tough job.
Because when you knock on someone's door, they're already probably not in a great place.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. Probably many of those reasons are not their own fault. But here's the car company coming to get their car back. So now, I mean, that's a tough thing to do.
Did he share those stories with you? What happened?
Well, I went with him a lot.
Oh, wow. Tell me about that.
I was like, I remember being 7 or 8 years old and holding a flashlight so he could like legally break into the car and take it back for General Motors.
And where would this have
And
been,
he
in
would
Connecticut?
he would go to other states.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I mean, and he was relentless. He was tenacious. He would get that car back for the company.
When they would do that, would you have like a tow truck? So in other words, you would, break in and put it onto the tow truck and take it?
It worked in different ways because I wasn't on every, I could only go here and there, or maybe on weekends or whatever. And when it wasn't a threatening situation,
That was my next question.
Obviously, yeah. But I think it worked both ways. A lot of times he would leave his vehicle there and he would drive the vehicle that they were trying to get back. And a lot of times they were parked in our driveway. And some of the times the people found out where that driveway was and came to our house.
You remember those incidents?
There was some sketchy, there were some knocks on the door that were threatening, and it didn't happen a lot, but the few times that it did happen, it was kind of like, are we okay? Is Dad okay?
Yeah. Did you see him interact in those situations?
I did.
Yeah, and how did he handle something
He
like that?
He handled them beautifully. I think he tried to show as much compassion as he could. But at the end of the day, he had a job to do, and that was where his paycheck was coming from. And so, it was never easy.
I'm sure not.
But he did it well, and it helped him be looked upon favorably, and that helped him kind of climb up. And
Advance.
he ended up becoming, the head of a large regional office for years
For finance.
for finance. I mean,
So he had to self-teach himself that as well.
he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you had brothers and sisters?
I have a sister,
Uh-huh.
3 years younger,
And
Lisa.
And is Lisa in the art industry at all?
She is not. She is not. Lisa worked in the insurance industry as well, and after a while, raised a family, has 2 beautiful boys. They're both doing great. Ricky and Griffin, and Lisa and I are close, and she's my biggest fan. I always send her works in progress,
Yeah.
and she's becoming more astute in the art world.
Right.
Yep, because she's on this journey with me.
So as a kid, when did you first start realizing you were interested in art?
I knew right away.
Like 3, 4?
Yeah, I mean, I was, without sounding braggy, I won a couple coloring contests.
I want to
early.
know about. No, those are interesting things to me. Yeah, and it's not braggy at all because I think it's important to the journey of most artists. I find this is the thread that falls through all artists, not just you, but all artists. So tell me about those contests and what you won.
Sure.
And how old you were.
Local grocery store, let's see, Jolly Green Giant brand sponsoring a coloring contest. And I won that sucker.
And how old were
I
you?
got a big beach towel with a big green footprint on it.
Do you still have it?
I don't, but I wish I did. I
old
was
were you, do you know?
probably 6,
Yeah.
5.
And how did your parents react to that? Did they was that an encouraging thing? They're like, wow, you won this thing.
I think they were impressed early on with some of my efforts. I think, they looked at that coloring contest piece, and I think they were like, I think we have a horse in the race.
And then you won another one besides that?
Well, no, then there were a couple little things like that, but then there were these school art assignments. Like in 4th grade, we had this assignment to draw our shoes. Take your shoes off and let's spend the next hour drawing them. And I brought that piece home, and I just remember, my mother kind of like taking a step back and saying, you drew these today? Like, you drew these? And I said, yeah. And so that piece is still hanging in my parents' on a wall in the basement with some other pieces. Yeah.
And that was great affirmation for you?
It was. I knew that I was, I couldn't explain it then, whether I was seeing correctly or seeing in a more natural way, a more precise way. But I was able to see, I think, more easily than maybe some other kids. And I was able to translate that onto paper in a natural way.
And you continued with art in not only grade school, clearly, but in high school as well, junior high and high school?
Oh, absolutely. In high school, I won the scholarship for art at the end of the year as a senior. I was, the great thing about my parents, even though they weren't artists and didn't support and encourage me that way by example,
Right.
they saw that this was a passion of mine, and they always put the wind at my back and encouraged me. Never once did they say, what are you going to do with that? Or how are you going to make a living?
Right.
Or never. And when I said I want to go to art school, they didn't bat an eye. They didn't blink.
That's unusual.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's really unusual.
I don't think I understood it or appreciated it as much then as I do now.
Yeah. And you got a scholarship to go.
A little scholarship,
Yeah.
From Wethersfield High School in Wethersfield, Connecticut.
Yeah, and that's where you graduated from?
That's where I graduated from. And then there were other little things I took on, a couple murals. I had never done a mural, but I asked my parents if I could take a crack at one in our basement.
Uh-huh.
And that came out great.
Is it still there?
That's a good question. I would like to know that.
Yeah, you should
actually.
document it if nothing else.
Yeah, and then a dentist hired me. I was probably a junior in high school to do a mural in his office because he catered to kids, and that seemed like a lot of pressure actually, because here he's a real dentist.
Right.
He has real
real office, too.
real patients in a real office, in a very nice office. So I would ride my scooter down to that. I mean, I worked on that thing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, but it was jungle animals with dental issues, braces.
You remember how much you got paid?
Brushing. Oh, man, maybe, this is probably 3 months worth of work for maybe $400 or $300, which I thought was like fantastic.
Well, it was actually,
But I worked my tail off on that.
and so that you were proud of having that.
I was proud of that.
Yeah, and other people probably saw it too.
Yeah.
And made note of that, I would assume.
Yeah. And then, as I got older through elementary school and then junior high and high school, I took on more challenges artistically. When I was going to draw something or paint something, I would really get my teeth into it, and I would kind of force myself to do something that I thought I wasn't sure I could do. So there was...
You're still doing that, huh?
I think I am.
Yeah.
I think I am. Yeah.
And did you go to were there museums to go look at art and that type of thing? Or was it just literally all self-exploratory?
So the biggest, city was Hartford, Connecticut. And there's the Wadsworth Atheneum. That's the art museum there.
Mm-hmm. It's a nice museum.
And yeah, so I would go there. But other than that, maybe a weekend trip to Boston.
Mm-hmm. Is this on your own, or would your folks go with you?
With my parents.
They would go too.
Yeah, so maybe we'd go up and see a Red Sox game and then go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And I started to get a feel for the schools in Boston. There was the Massachusetts Painting School. There was the Art Institute of Boston. So I started to, really kind of start to process, do I want to go to art school? Is this where I'm at? Is this really what's in my heart? So,
and clearly,
it was.
I was going to say, you clearly made the decision it was. And where'd you end up going?
I went to a very small independent art school called the Art Institute of Boston. It had no relation to that series of art institutes that popped up like 20 years later. I believe they opened in 1961 or 60. So I think there might have been 200 students. I mean, just a tiny school with great teachers.
And why'd you pick that place?
I felt like Boston was a great place to be immersed in art school. I felt like the path I saw was as an illustrator. I could see a career path there. The idea of becoming a painter and just selling paintings, I just couldn't see that path. And maybe I just wasn't thinking about it the right way. But I started really consuming and just devouring books on illustration, the Illustrator's Annuals. I knew what was on every page by heart every year. I mean, the second that thing was published and put on the bookshelves, it was mine. That was like, I couldn't wait to get into those. And those were my heroes.
And who were those heroes?
Oh, man. Bernie Fuchs and Mark English and, David, God, I should know his last name. I copied his style for so long. I'll think of it. But just...
So these were the guys that were working, that were alive and doing illustrations currently.
They were doing the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they were doing the cover of Time magazine, these beautiful portraits. And I was, and that's really when I started to figure out kind of the difference between fine art and illustration, because a lot of times you look at a beautiful portrait that is considered an illustration, but let's be honest, it's a beautiful painting. But I was starting to figure out and discern what makes an illustration an illustration. And the deeper I got into it, the more I loved it, because it's kind of how I think. I mean, the illustration has an idea that it's a drawing that has a master, which is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Painting doesn't necessarily have a master. Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. This was what, 87, 88 kind of time frame?
No, you're giving me too much credit.
Yeah, okay.
I graduated art school in 1983.
In 83.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I graduated high school in 80, and I
Okay.
went to a 3-year art school. There was no 4-year
Yeah.
option at the Art Institute. And I loved it. I just loved it. I would stay up all night working on my assignments. I was working as a waiter and or a busboy, then a waiter, so I could make some money. I just remember getting very little sleep, which was okay.
It wasn't the beer and the Red Sox games. It was actually painting.
All right, I will come clean on one thing. I did occasionally skip figure drawing to go to a Red Sox day game. I mean, it was across the street, for crying out loud.
Oh, was it
Yeah.
really? So, have you ever done any drawings or paintings of the Red Sox?
I actually have, and there's one painting of Dwight Evans swinging. He had a beautiful swing, and that is an unfinished piece, about 80% done. That's in my parents' basement, but that was I think it was David Grove was the illustrator, but that was done very much in a David Grove kind of style.
And so you really are a baseball fan?
I love baseball. I always, now that I have lived in Utah for quite a while, I hardly miss a game. I mean, listen, there's music playing in my studio from morning till night, but when the only reason that there isn't music is when I'm streaming a Red Sox game or a Patriots game. And you know what? It's my umbilical cord to home.
Yeah, I understand that.
It tethers me to things that I adore, that are precious to me. And that's like, hearing those baseball voices, even if I'm not really listening, I might be in the middle of painting, but it's there and it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's like
feels
apple
good.
pie smells or something.
It feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you graduate in, what year did you graduate from?
1983.
In 83. And
Yeah.
that was from the art school. And then, so what are you going to do at that point?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I'm sure most artists ask. In fact, now they've got it. They've got their degree. What the hell do I do with it?
And I did well. I won a scholarship at I won the big illustration award at the Art Institute. I did very well there, and I just loved it. But you're right. Now I'm out.
Right.
Now what? I'm a waiter. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. Good life lesson.
Yeah.
You learn a lot about humanity.
Yeah,
and
sure.
There's a lot to learn there in the
it.
humanity department. But I really just said, you know what, just start getting out there, boots to pavement, and knock on some doors and show people some work. Back then, there was no internet. You didn't have a digital portfolio. You had your portfolio that you would lug around. And so I would go to the Boston Globe. I would go to publications like the Atlantic Monthly, or I would go to advertising agencies and try and meet with the production person or the art buyer and open my book up and have a conversation. And, and it worked. I got some jobs. I mean, I did, at one point I did an illustration for the front page, the sports page of the Boston Globe. And I couldn't believe it when I went around the next morning and there was my work on the cover of the sports page of the Boston Globe.
Yeah, what was it?
It was a figure skater. They asked me to do a piece for the Olympics. I think I got in a little over my head.
This was 84?
84, 85.
Yeah.
I think it came out good, not great. But again, that was another good lesson, good gut check.
Yeah.
It's like, don't get in over your head.
Right.
Be careful what you wish for. But there were some really beautiful moments, whether it be a newspaper ad or a print ad in a magazine. And so was I making a lot of money? Hell no.
Mm-hmm.
Was I making enough to feel good and buy a few groceries and chip in rent to my roommates? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I still needed to wait tables, and I did. So, you learn quickly though.
Mm-hmm.
How's this going to work? How am I going to, at one point, I actually convinced a small agency, and I forget the name of it, in Boston, that they needed an in-house illustrator. And they hired me, and I became that guy. I didn't have much fun doing what they needed me to do, so I kind of left after a few months. I thought, you know what? I'd rather be knocking on doors and going to agencies. And
what was it that you didn't like about that?
I think it was 90% of it was marker renderings for ads, comps, marker comps. But again, good learning because you learn to draw quickly.
Right.
You learn to get it right the first time. You don't have time to get it wrong.
Just no creativity, though.
Not much creativity, but spontaneity.
Mm-hmm.
Spontaneity, you become good at thumbnails and gesture drawings, and you refine those skills. You're kind of like banging in color, and you're thinking about composition.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's never a wasted lesson.
No, unless you just don't pay attention. Then
Right,
it is.
right.
So that doesn't work out, and then you go banging on doors again?
Right. So I'm getting more work as an illustrator, and the guys some of my best friends to this day, I'm watching what they're doing, and we're all, having little peaks and valleys of success. So I just finally, I guess after what year was it? It was probably close to 90.
So 7 years.
Something. I did take a job at a direct mail place as an illustrator / designer. Again, I wasn't happy. There was the occasional project. They had I think the San Diego Zoo account. So, I was drawing a lot of animals, and that was fun. But it was too corporate. It wasn't creatively satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was a paycheck with benefits, and that was good. So that lasted 2 years. I finally discovered that there was a course given by the Greater Ad Club of Boston called the Creative Concepts course.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a front door to advertising. So I thought, well, that's interesting because I can do a great ad comp with markers now. I mean, really dialed. But now here's the thinking part of the equation, right? You have to come up with a good idea for an ad, and then you have to execute it, communicate it, express it.
Mm-hmm.
I was so intrigued by that. I thought, coming up with ideas for ads? I mean, that's super creative.
Yeah, very much so.
Very challenging,
Right.
very, very intellectual, and then expressing it. I've already got that part down. So I took that course and I loved it. I just got bit.
And you're 28.
Something like that, yeah. And I put together a book of spec ads to try and get a job as an art director, a junior or assistant art director at an agency. And I thought, I felt like I'm not abandoning illustration. I'm just using it in another way.
Right, which is true.
Which is true, especially back then. Things weren't being done on a Mac.
Yeah, no, there were no Macs.
There were no Macs. And so I put together a really nice collection of ideas, spec ads, beautiful renderings, and I started getting jobs at agencies to go in and do comps for new business pitches. So kind of a quick hit, good money. You might work for 2 weeks getting ready for a new business pitch.
Mm-hmm.
The guys would come in, hey, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I would show them my spec book of ads. And I made some friends. So one of those was an opportunity at Leonard Monahan Lubars in Providence, Rhode Island, and they were pitching the Keds account, the sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
Keds was a hot brand back then. And I was smart enough to have my portfolio with me of ads. And David Lubars, who was the new hot creative director, working under Tom Monahan, who was a legend in the business, and Tom and I are such good friends to this day, and he has actually become a painter. And so our relationship now is we share works in progress with each other, and it's this beautiful thing, and I love it. And it's all in the context of this advertising relationship.
Mm-hmm.
He was my boss.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy I sat down with and did my very first ad with, and it was probably his 3,000th or 4,000th ad, and he was arguably more excited than I was. And I thought, I want to be just like him.
Yeah. And that was for
look
kids?
at his enthusiation, his passion.
Was that for the kids' account? Or?
No, it was like for a little recruitment ad for a secretary for the agency.
Yeah, okay.
But he was giving me a crack at working on a real ad.
Right.
And anyway, I spent, that was my first agency. I got hired because I showed David Lubars my book. He said, I'll tell you what, you've done a great job on all this new business stuff. If we win the account, you get a job. I was like, great, let's win the account. We won the account.
Were you involved in that kids thing?
Yeah, I did much of the comps for the ads.
So what is a comp? Explain what that is.
It's a rendering of an ad. It's a marker drawing of the ad, like, a headline, visual, copy. Here's the visual. We can't go shoot it. That costs too much money. I mean, nowadays it's all done, like,
Video,
it's
probably.
almost fully produced by the time, even as a...
And would you write the content as well as the...
I wasn't a writer. I was just trying to be an art director.
Yeah, so you were doing all the kind of the
The
art.
writers were writing and the art directors were art directing.
I got it.
Yep. And they won the account. David hired me as an assistant art director, and I was in what then was the hottest little creative shop in New England. I mean, this little boutique agency that was started by Tom Monahan and Bruce Leonard and Bob Saby, and they hired David as the hot new creative director. And
This is Providence, Rhode Island?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And all of a sudden, I'm
making money for one
flying
thing.
to LA to do TV commercials and learning that craft.
Yeah, and what do you do on something like that? Tell me about that.
Well, the first shoot I ever went on was for Keds, and, we're searching for a voiceover for the brand. And David finally decides on this new, young, talented actress that not many people had ever heard of. And we're at this recording place in LA, and she's coming in to do the tagline, which was, Keds, they feel good.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And in through the door walks Demi Moore, right? With short blonde hair.
Yeah.
And she's like this young up-and-coming actress trying to make it.
Like 22 or something.
Hasn't done much at all.
Yeah.
And has this great kind of scrapey...
Yeah, she's got a kind of a baritone voice.
Yeah, this kind of little scrapey voice, but really sexy and very feminine. And she comes in and sits down, and we did, Keds. They feel good about 1 million times. And after 1 million, she's like, I can do it better. I want to do more.
Yeah.
I can do it better. And I loved that, So
were you sitting in the room as she does all this?
Absolutely.
And what's your job in that?
Well, I'm a sponge right now. I'm a assistant art director trying to learn how to do a TV spot.
Got it.
David's taken me under his wing, which
Yeah.
was very gracious of him. I mean, he didn't have to invite an assistant art director to LA on a shoot.
But he knew you were something and that you would grow, and the only way you're going to grow is to see it.
I hope that's the reason.
Yeah.
But there is only one way to learn TV, and that's to go do TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really complicated thing, and there are a lot of forces have to come together. A lot of things have to line up. We always used to joke there's 1 million ways that you can have a great idea, and there's 1 million ways it can get screwed up in the making of. I mean, 1 million. So navigating all that, learning that craft, takes years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just such a thrill. I was getting a paycheck. I was loving the challenge of coming up with the ideas, thinking strategically. Are we on strategy? I mean, learning composition, shooting with some of the best photographers, that there are throughout my career, which ended up being a 30-year, advertising career. And, I played the game at, the top level, I mean, a lot of my nearest and dearest friends are still in the business, and I kind of live vicariously through them.
Yeah, I'm sure they live vicariously through you right now.
It is that.
Yeah.
It is that. And they've been just lovely and supportive, and they think what I'm doing is just so great, and they applaud me for it, and that means the world to me.
And how long did you stay in Providence?
I was in Providence from about 88 until 93. And this happened very efficiently. When you start as a kid at your first agency, you're always going to be the kid until you leave that agency.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, we all go through that, those growing pains.
Right. And
so I got to the point where I needed to leave, and I needed to be looked at differently, and I needed to get bigger chops, and you get bigger chops by working on bigger, more important jobs. I just needed to leave and go to the next step. So I went across the street to the rival agency, Pagano, Schenck and Kay, and that was the best decision of my life because I met my wife.
Yeah.
I met Julie.
Was she working there?
She was working there as a PR assistant, learning public relations and helping on new business. And we met there, and I just remember thinking, this girl is just the biggest breath of fresh air I have ever met. And I still tell this to people when they ask today. I mean, Julie was the most grounded person I had ever met in my life. The best way I can say it is she was so comfortable in her own skin, not trying to be anybody but who she was, which was a beautiful thing. Yeah. Why not be that? And I just remember thinking, that is so refreshing, because a lot of people are trying to be everything but themselves.
Right.
And she just wouldn't even know how to do that. Extremely genuine and cute as hell and smart. She graduated like at the top of her class, I think top 3 in high school, and top 5% at BC. Yeah. Like whip smart. And
she didn't mind going out with an art guy?
No, I think she was working at an agency, and so she knew kind of the agency culture, and she knew like the interesting individuals that work in the creative department, whether they're from the art side or the writing side. Agencies are colorful places. They're vibrant, they're passionate. People are, it's a very creative culture. It's not corporate.
And what did you go in as? What was your job title?
I went in as an art director at Pagano, straight art director, not senior, not maybe junior. Was it junior? Maybe junior. But I wasn't there very long. Julie and I met, and that was great. And, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. New job. I met Julie, and then the phone rings, and it's a creative recruiter in the ad space, headhunter, calling about a job in Salt Lake City, Utah. And she's like, she said, I've seen your work. You've won a few awards. I really like kind of how you think, and your art direction is beautiful. And there's this little agency in Salt Lake, and they're trying to become like a Leonard Monahan Lubar's, the creative hot shop in Salt Lake. And I was like, they do advertising in Salt Lake City? And she's like, you better believe it. These guys are great. And I said, well, Lori, it's crazy. I mean, I've always wanted to go west. I never knew how to get there. I didn't have a plan. So I'm really intrigued. I mean, can you send me their work? sends me the work. And this isn't like in an email because there's no email.
All right.
This is like 2 days later.
Right.
You know, I don't even know if there was FedEx. Oh my God.
There would have been
dating
FedEx. What is this, like 92 maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is 92.
Yeah.
It is 92.
I'm
so
following the thread well then.
I open up their book and I'm looking at, and I'm like, wow, these guys are really like, these ads could have been done here. You know, I mean, these guys have
that Eastern sensibility that everything in the East is.
There were smartly written headlines that had irony built in, and there was a sense of humor, and there was handsome art direction, and I was like, damn. I said, you know what? I want to fly out there, and if they'll have me, I want to fly out there and meet them. They'll have you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and she goes, you like to ski, huh? And I said, oh, you better believe it.
And this is the recruiter that's saying this to you?
Yeah. And she said, you know, Park City is 35 miles up the road. I said, shut the front door. She's like, so anyway, I flew out there and met them, and they were charming, you know, 3 Mormon guys. The name of the agency was Williams and Rockwood. And I was the first person they ever hired from outside of Utah. Mm. So I was this alien.
How'd they find you? Do you know?
Through Lori. They called, you know.
How'd she find you?
Lori was working with art directors and writers from the creatively focused agencies in the U.S. That was her niche. She would basically go to the best agencies, the most creative shops, get to know the creatives
and steal them.
and then, or give them opportunities to grow, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, steal them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. Well, it's a competitive world. Yeah.
And
there's not probably that many great creative illustrator people like that in art, in these advertising companies, I would think.
And back then, the award books were the way to gauge that. And
I see.
Awards have become a little bit of a dirty word these days, and people don't care as much about them. I mean, they're still important. They still show that you can outthink everyone else.
And these are the trade show accolades.
Yes.
And you're winning those. And you're winning those. Is that it?
The regional ones and a few of the national ones. Yes. So there's the one show. There's in New England, it's the New England Addies. Mm-hmm. And every region has their award show, but then there's the big national ones like the One Show and CA Communication Arts. There's the Clios. There's the Cannes Film Festival. Mm-hmm. A big component of Cannes is advertising. So, right, that's how a creative would
find you.
A creative recruiter would find you.
Yes.
And that's how, if you were winning awards, then that meant respect amongst your peers and in the industry. And so.
Immediate credibility, really.
Yes.
And so you had that, and they found
I had enough of that. I was still kind of early on in my career. I had enough of it to, get noticed. And
now you're going to go to Utah, but you have a problem. You have Julie is not in Utah.
Exactly.
Yeah, what happens there?
Exactly. So I said, Jules, here's how I think this should go. This is a huge opportunity to go west. I don't know that I'm going to get another phone call to do that. And it's very unique. It's Utah. This isn't like go to LA. This is very unique. This is a little agency that wants to become just like the agencies that I'm from. Mm-hmm. That's who they want to be. I know how to do that. I know the culture. I know the thinking. I know the standards. Mm-hmm. I know how high the bar is. If I can go help them figure that out, then that would be fun. And I said, if I go out there and I don't like it, what's the worst that can happen? I come back. Mm-hmm. Or what's the best that can happen? You come out. So I said, if we can just do it with that kind of mindset, then I think I should just go do it. And she's like, then just go do it. Mm-hmm. 3 months later, she moved out there.
Yeah, it didn't last long until she had to follow you.
And I said, Jules, here's what I'm doing fine. This is great. I'm enjoying this ride. And I want to do right by these guys. I want to kill it for them. Mm-hmm. And I said, you don't need to think about anything other than skiing. Learn to ski.
Mm-hmm.
I said ski every day and just
Yeah, have fun.
have fun. I said, don't work for the next several months. Just go ski till the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a crazy snow year in '93 in Utah. They still talk about it. I mean, it was epic. And so that's what she did. And you should see her ski now.
Yeah, she got pretty good, did she?
She's silky smooth. Beautiful, beautiful skier. So she moved out. We shared an apartment. She took some temp jobs here and there until she found her PR job.
Mm-hmm.
And we fell in love with Utah. We fell in love with the West is what I really should say. And that's when I just became, my heart just became ignited by the West. And I not just Utah, by the whole West.
No, it's.
That's when it happened.
It happens,
Right there,
yeah.
93.
And so, how long did you stay in that position in Utah?
3 years. 3 years, and some lovely things happened, and I still have some dear friends. In fact, the owner of that agency, Tim Williams, I'm good friends with Tim. He's a very successful guy.
And did they hit it out of the park? Did they get big?
I don't think they were trying to get big. They were just trying to get good.
I see.
Yeah. And we did that. We won. We cleaned up at the award shows. And I got to work on such fun accounts like the Utah Symphony. And they were trying to attract a younger audience. So it wasn't, don't do old conservative symphony ads. Make it cool for a 20-year-old to want to go to the symphony, to want to understand classical music.
And you were the young kid, so you could do that.
Yeah. And so the best ad I ever did, it got in communication arts. It just was a little tiny, a little violin on an all white space with a little violin, and the headline was beautiful typography, and the headline said, "You'll find yourself playing air violin."
And did you write everything?
Yeah.
You did the content too?
Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. And so I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about classical music working on the symphony. We had a lot of fun with unconventional Utah Symphony ads to attract a younger audience. I mean, it was such a kick.
But at some point, you outgrew Utah, that ad.
Right.
agency.
I was working on small regional accounts, and I was doing TV spots, and we were winning awards, and we were winning new business, and had so much fun. Like, we were working on Big Sky, Montana, and so I'm on my first helicopter shoot above the peak of Big Sky in 60-mile-an-hour winds. Like, the helicopter is getting batted around like a ping pong ball. And I'm thinking, one half of me is thinking, this is the most frickin' fun I have ever had. And I'm not sure if I want it to end. And I'm also not sure if I'm going to make it out alive.
Yeah.
But there were such cool opportunities like that. And
So you got to love the West.
got to love the West.
But then you left, clearly, and went somewhere else.
Well, I needed to work on bigger brands,
Yeah.
and I needed to work on bigger TV. I needed to have big agency
You
experience.
had ambition.
Yeah. I was still working I had only worked at small regional agencies up until now. I had not worked for a big agency with big at-bats.
Right.
And I needed that.
But you did do that. So where'd you go?
I got hired at Hal Riney and Partners in San Francisco and stayed there for the next 4 or 5 years, and working mostly on Saturn, the car, when it was a really hot brand and a new idea by General Motors.
What'd your dad think about that when you told him he was doing?
He loved it.
He must have just.
He loved it.
That was the greatest.
He
thing
loved
ever.
it because we had this kind of inside family joke where I was buying, when I would get a car, I would get anything but a GM car.
Yeah.
And he would label that as biting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah.
It just drove him nuts that and I moved out to Utah with an Alfa Romeo Spider convertible.
Of course you did.
And when I started doing 360s down Parley's Canyon in the snowstorms, my dad said, "You know what? Sell that thing, and we're going to get you like a GMC Blazer, a Chevy Blazer or a GMC Jimmy."
Yeah.
And so he called the dealer, and they set me all up and gave me a killer deal. And there I am driving my SUV. I don't even think they were called SUVs back then.
No, they were. I had one.
So now he was like feeling, now everything was right with the world.
Yeah.
You know,
And you're doing the ads for, this is for the Saturn?
well, that was Utah, right?
Yeah.
I had the vehicle
Right.
realization.
But in San Francisco, you get the Saturn account.
We get the Saturn account. It was a new account at Riney. Every agency in America wanted that account. Hal won it because Hal being Hal.
Yeah, and that's a $150 million account.
It was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. I mean, new car brand by GM, and they're pushing everything they've got behind it.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You know, a whole new way of selling cars. The price is the price. You know what their mission statement was? It wasn't to build the best cars in America. It was to be the friendliest car company in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they were.
Mm-hmm.
And they were. That was the Saturn charm. I mean, they had people coming from all ends of the country and beyond to tour the Saturn factory and have barbecues on the front lawn of Saturn.
Because they knew if they bought the car, it was going to be the best price you could give them. Is that the deal?
And they weren't car dealers. They were your car friends.
Yeah, they tried a whole different. That was a completely different
thing. You
concept.
You go to barbecues with your friends.
Yeah.
You know, you have fun with your friends.
Yeah.
You go to concerts with your friends.
So-
they throw concerts.
So if you owned a Saturn, you automatically became part
You
of
were
the
cool.
tribe.
You were
too.
cool.
And
You
the
were
tribe.
part of the tribe.
Yeah.
Part of the tribe. That's why the tagline was a different kind of company, a different kind of car. It wasn't about the car first. It was about the company.
Yeah. And how
They were
long did
selling a
that
culture.
last, by the way?
Oh, you know, the inside joke was we used to say that Saturn said, you know, we're going to be a 100-year car company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the truth was they were the 100-year car company with the 5-year plan.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't exactly out in front of everybody else when it came to other options, like SUVs were getting, becoming a thing. Little sports cars by more affordable sports cars were being introduced. They weren't there.
They had the right concept, just the wrong product.
Well, they had a great company culture, way of doing business, but they were a little behind on making the cars cool and forward thinking. The cars were good. They were safe.
So did they only last 5 years?
No, they lasted longer. It was like 20 years, but they ultimately fizzled out because they never caught up with that initial problem of not introducing, here's a forward-thinking company that is late with the forward-thinking cars. And that ultimately was that they never could catch up.
Yeah. That's interesting. And how long did you stay at this big firm in San Francisco?
5 years, and then I'd met wonderful, just such a great friend and work partner, creative partner. Mimi Cook was my partner of 6 years, and Mimi and I were a creative team. I was the art director, she was the writer, but she loved art direction as much as I loved writing, and so we really worked seamlessly together. We knew it doesn't matter who's doing what. Let's just knock it out of the park. Let's, I think way back in the day, the writer would come up with the idea and the art director would make it look beautiful.
Right.
Or
But
cool.
you were collaborating as
Very
a team.
collaborative.
Yeah.
And we were both very, our minds worked that way. She had an amazing taste level aesthetically. And I loved to write. I was very much, I think, in my career, a writer's art director because I would always protect the words. I would never try to have the art direction outshine the copy. I would have it enhance or enrich the copy, but not try to outdo it. And that's
So when you leave in 6 years, do Mimi come with you?
No, we went together to a really amazing agency, Goodby Silverstein and Partners in San Francisco. And I stayed there for 2 years before I got a call to another crazy call. And, it was to leave the market and go to Seattle and be the first one in on what was then the largest agency in Seattle, 200 people plus.
Oh, that's big.
Yep. and it was a place called the Evans Group, and it was not a good agency.
Big agency, but
Big
it's not,
agency, regional,
right?
tons of business. But I'm afraid to say getting business in all the wrong ways and then doing business in all the wrong ways. And it became, I think, not a pretty place.
Yeah.
And certainly
so a bad fit for you.
Well, no, they were looking to turn it around
Yeah.
because a large holding company, Publicis, the French company, bought 3 big agencies in the U.S. and they wanted to, that was going to be their footprint in the U.S. And they wanted to have this be their West Coast center of excellence. And so they wanted a whole new team to come in quickly and save what was then the T-Mobile account,
Oh yeah.
or VoiceStream. VoiceStream was the Seattle regional value brand that became T-Mobile. VoiceStream had one foot out the door because they see that they're going to become T-Mobile, and they don't need a regional agency that doesn't have a creative bone in their body. They need an agency that can handle a big brand and launch a new brand.
And what did you come in and what was your job?
I came in as the chief creative officer and co-president.
So you were
I was literally the first one
Yeah.
in to go, okay,
yeah.
like
This is a step up in your duties.
I have gone from senior art director. I've skipped over, I have skipped over creative director, group creative director, executive creative director, to chief creative officer and co-president, which is a whole business end of the thing that
You've got to figure out.
I've got to figure out, and I've got 200 people, God bless every one of their souls, that I don't know whether they're going to help or hurt. I don't know what their agenda is. I don't know what makes them tick.
All right.
I don't know what tools are in the toolbox.
And you're their boss.
Here's what I do know. There's a $250 million account called VoiceStream that's becoming a national brand called T-Mobile, and they have one foot out the frickin' door. And if the other foot goes out the door, I don't have a job.
I was going to say, you're gone.
The tent folds.
Yeah, for sure.
The tent folds. And so I said to Julie, you can't work. You cannot have a job because I'm never going to be home. I'm going to be at this place 24/7.
Yeah.
I might come home to take a nap. And if you don't manage our life and keep me together, I will lose it because this is bananas, what I have just stepped into. This is a hornet's nest.
And she agreed to that, I guess. Yeah.
She agreed to that. And I hired a friend as a CEO, and together we started opening doors and looking in closets and figuring out what the hell we had just stepped into. And it was a big, hot mess.
Yeah. So you had to fire people and bring in people.
We had to, right. I mean, and I didn't have any experience in doing that, but I also figured out quickly that that's nothing to be taken lightly. And I didn't take it lightly. And I know that even if it was someone who didn't ask for the change and didn't want the change, who understood that standards was going to be way up here now and they had to work harder, they didn't sign up for that. Publicists wanted that, but these individuals may or may not have wanted that. The pressure, the challenge, am I going to, they had never worked at great agencies. They didn't know that path.
Right.
But some people chose to rise up. And our challenge to them was, we want you to do the best work of your career here, now.
Right. We need it right now so
Starting
I can keep my job.
now. And we're going to help. We're going to be in this together. I said, you know what? This is a cause before this is an agency. I said, there's no way that we're an agency. This is a cause. And if we get the cause right, we will become an agency.
Were you doing the other brands too besides the T-Mobile? You had to do it all.
The good news was this agency, who had never done great work by any measure, I mean, I'm sure there was the exception here and there, but by any measure, they weren't winning, big national awards, and they weren't in the show books, and they were winning new business by undercutting whatever agency, making deals.
Yeah.
They were making deals. And I'm not going to mention names of any, the leaders of that place, but
Right.
they weren't exactly leading. They were other agendas.
Yeah.
So
And I take it you saved the T-Mobile?
T-Mobile is still there today.
Yeah.
And that was 2000 was the year I went up there. It's now 2019.
Yeah.
19 years. T-Mobile is still there.
Yeah. And so how long did you stay at that agency? Did you stay?
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years. We turned it inside out in every way, shape, in every way you can think of. We changed the entire culture. It went from a regional retail agency to a national competitor that understood branding. The beauty was the small regional accounts that they had were great creative opportunities. Like any agency, any creative agency would kill to have. The Washington Lottery, Washington Tourism.
How about Microsoft? Did you guys get that one?
I think we had projects.
Yeah.
They had another. They had another agency.
Yeah.
But the Washington Apple Commission, the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
I mean, I was shooting Seattle Seahawk commercials with Eugene Levy playing the devil in a bad devil costume.
So you're having fun too.
Well, I was having fun, but I was working around the clock, literally bleeding through the eyeballs.
So
Yeah.
at this point where you're killing yourself, have you considered going back to painting yet?
Well, I never really started painting other than being in art school.
Well, in art school, and you did illustrations.
Illustration.
Yeah.
I had never become a painter,
Right.
quote unquote.
Right. But was that entering your mind yet that
No.
And you weren't dabbling with it at all? You were just
Zero.
completely focused
No,
on
I didn't
what you're
pick up
doing.
a brush during my 30-year ad career.
Yeah. Not at all.
Zero, not once.
But did you think about it?
Here's the best answer, and Julie will tell you this loud and clear. Every time I was on production in another town, and there were many, many, many productions, and I was everywhere, the first thing I would do was go to the galleries. Everyone was, if we had downtime, everyone's going to the bar. I eventually made it to the bar, but I was at the galleries.
Were you buying art at all?
Here and there, a couple
Yeah.
little pieces. I couldn't afford a ton, but
Yeah.
I was going to the galleries, and I was walking out with the exact same feeling each and every time for 30 years. I would walk out frustrated and in equal parts inspired.
The frustrated is I'm not there.
I'm not doing this, and I know there's something in the tank from art school and post-art school as an illustrator. I know there's something in the tank. I don't exactly know what, because it never got completely figured out or sorted out on a deep level. But, and I'm so freaking inspired by what I just saw. So it became this conflict.
Yeah. And did that continue to grow?
Bigger than me.
Yeah.
Bigger than me.
And how long did that conflict last? How many years?
The rest of, it started small and it grew for 30 years. And so my last big job in advertising was the Seattle gig to turn the agency around, which I feel we did successfully. And I felt like at that point, I had proven a lot. I had proven, it was kind of an against all odds situation, let me tell you. It was like the laughing stock of Seattle. And a lot of people, when we started winning awards and then beating other agencies in new business pitches, people started saying, like, did that just happen? And how and why did that just happen? So we recruited our executive team from the best agencies in the country, the most creatively respected agencies in the country. People, friends from Wyden and Kennedy, people from Chiat Day in LA. These are people that had worked and led the biggest, coolest brands, done the best work. And all of a sudden, we were at this no-name place trying to save the biggest account that Publicis now had and change everything else.
Yet at the same time, you're having these emotions of, I should be doing something that I'm not.
No, I'm not there yet.
When does it get there?
I have a painter's heart, right? And I don't tell anybody this. Like, nobody knows this. I didn't share this with anybody. Well, I didn't share it with anybody.
Yeah.
And I was busy trying to lead and change the culture at this agency and come out the other end in a really good place on behalf of the holding company, on behalf of people that I asked to join a cause that I didn't know what it was going to. I said, all I know is I need you.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can pull this off, but I need you. I know we can't do this without you. So they would leave a really great agency and come there, and they'd know they'd have their hands on the wheel.
Yeah. You felt this responsibility of, I brought these people.
Of course.
And I want to make sure that I don't leave them in a lurch.
That's why I'm not thinking about painting.
Yeah.
Because I'm on the hook for a lot here. Mm-hmm. I'm on the hook for a lot. I mean, my everything is on the line here. So you're darn right. Like, if I'm in a new business pitch, we're in it to win it.
Yeah.
And we won 4 out of our first 5 new business pitches, and people's heads were spinning in that market.
But at some point, you get to the point where you feel comfortable. You've done your job. You've done all you can do. And now at some point, I need to do some things for me.
Well, Julie, right. And listen, and there were a lot of growing. I make the joke that job lasted 5 years, and it also shaved 5 years off my life.
Yeah, probably did.
So Julie gets a phone call this time because she has become quite the PR person in the industry and is, really being sought after. And the original place in San Francisco where she went to work with 2 women founders called her and said, "Will you lead our New York office? It's a huge job. It's critically important." And they said, "We can't think of another person that it should be other than you."
Mm-hmm.
So here we go from, our daughter is just born. She's not even a year old. And we thought, what a great way for Julie to have the big at bat this time.
Yeah, it's her turn on the barrel.
I'm kind of burned out, and my head is spinning because of the last 5 years. And I said, it's also a great reason for us to move back east and have Kate become connected with family and get to know family and get plugged in instead of always being out west and never really knowing who her grandparents are and her cousins. So we said, you know what, this is a good life decision. Let's do it. And we made a 3-month pit stop in Utah for ski season and lived in our cabin and then kept going east. And we were there for 5 years. And
on the East Coast.
On the East Coast. And all those things happened. Kate became super plugged in and connected to family. We were around our family, which was a beautiful thing.
Were you painting then? Did you start?
Nope.
Still haven't started.
Nope. And I was, and so I had just come off of this vortex of this big job and this change in Seattle. And I'm trying to figure out if I even want to go work in an agency now. So now it's starting to seep in, right? Because I'm 45.
And you're more of a house dad at this house
I'm right, because Julie's got this
Right.
massive job in the heart of Manhattan, commuting 60 miles each way on the train.
Right.
So I'm taking care of Kate, and I'm like, I'm in these places like, where there's no changing room except the women's bathroom. And I'm in the women's bathroom changing diapers and
Right.
apologizing for it.
Right.
And the moms are like, "Oh, you're fine. Don't worry about it." Anyway, taking the occasional freelance gig in the city, which I liked better. Getting a good day rate to go in as a super senior creative person and work on whatever, new business pitch. I'm working with old friends who are now partners for a day or a week or 3 weeks, doing well with the day rate. And I'm not married to the agency. And actually, I think I felt like because New York still does advertising, let's just say in a way that's different than the West Coast. It's not a guarantee that it's about the work. It's many times about the deal,
Yeah, the
about the
business.
business,
Yeah.
about the phone call, about the meeting, behind the meeting, behind the meeting,
Right.
stuff you can't control, stuff that makes my head explode. And I'm like, you know what? I have more autonomy. I can just say what I feel, and they can't fire me. And I liked it. I was like, I don't want to be back at a big agency.
Right. You've done that.
Right.
Enjoyed it.
So when I'm working, it's
Conquered.
great. And when I'm not, I'm in the galleries. I'm taking Kate into the city. We're going to the galleries. I'm getting my head in the painting game. Anyway, so
and you do that for 5 years, pretty much?
4 years. And then right at the end, I decided, well, okay, I'm 48, 49. I'm going to jump into a painting class at the New York Academy of Art, which is a terrific painting school. And I'm going to take an all-day Saturday class every Saturday for like 3 months. And I'm going to do this to sort some things out. Can I paint? Even if I can, do I want to paint? How much rust is on? How quickly will it come off or not come off? What is my painting style? I don't even know. I have no clue.
And how long did that take?
Had a
doing
wonderful
that?
teacher. I'm spacing on his last name, but David was his first name, and he was a terrific painter and a great teacher. And what was great about this class was there were only like 6 students in this all-day Saturday class. So I took that class for the better part of 2 months, and then Julie gets the even bigger phone call. And it's Utah.
Back to Utah.
And it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I was, other than being around family and old friends in back east, I have a Western heart. You know, I'm an Easterner that's been Westernized. And once that happens, I don't know how else to say it, but there's no way to go back.
Yeah,
There's no way to go back.
Very typical.
No way to go back.
Yeah.
So I'm a fish out of water, even though I know these waters. And I'm like, Julie's on the phone with the founder of her company, and I can overhear the conversation.
So you know where you're going.
He is strongly suggesting that she come out there and talk about this opportunity.
Right.
He is not going to let her hang up the phone.
Yeah.
And I'm in the kitchen going, I'll start packing now.
So you guys end up back in Utah.
We end up back in Utah. My biggest regret about leaving the East, other than leaving family and friends, is that I had to leave the painting class. And that's when I knew that what my path was.
Yeah, because you didn't want to leave it.
I didn't want to leave it.
Yeah, because you're having fun.
And I had some paintings going as that were assignments, that I was working on.
Right.
And the painting teacher was saying very nice things to me about my work. And he was saying things like, you haven't painted in 30 years. And I said, David, I swear on a holy stack of Bibles, I have not painted in 30 years. And he said, well, you need to paint.
Yeah.
You need to be painting.
And so how long did you paint and do this before you go, okay, I think I've got enough chops here to try to go after and see if a gallery
So we get to
interested?
Utah, and Julie's got her thing figured out.
Yeah.
And, we're consolidating 2 households into one, 2 sets of bills into one. We had been managing 2 homes forever, which gets old and stressful at some points. And so everything is being consolidated, and Julie's got this great gig, the biggest at bat of her career, her biggest job by far. And I'm looking in the mirror going, I can either open a small creative agency and try and do things that this market doesn't have and doesn't offer, or I can paint.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of saying this to myself. And I finally get to the point where I realize that opening a small agency is the same can of worms that opening any business comes with. A lot of problems. You're on the hook for a lot.
And you don't have the creativity, freedom that you do with painting.
No. And I'm 50.
Right. So there was an epiphany time. Was the 50 epiphany?
It really was. Not that I felt like, I think age is just a number. I consider myself to be a young spirit.
Yeah, but you're a goal-oriented person.
I am. And the fact that this had been pent up for so long and had been suppressed for so long, and I just started asking myself, how many more galleries can I walk into and walk out of with this feeling that it just kind of now pisses me off.
Yeah, because I should be on those walls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or at least try to be.
Yeah.
So here I go. And here's the beauty of Julie. You know, I'm about to lay this news on my wife of, what was it at that time? 2011. Well, this year is our 25th wedding anniversary. So I don't know, 15th, 16th. And, you know, she's been watching this kind of
evolution
grow in me, especially with the painting class, that because she had seen my opinion and heard my opinion about paintings for 30 years, but she had never seen me do a painting. I mean, she saw my schoolwork from the Art Institute, but other than that, she hadn't seen. So all of a sudden I start painting and she's like, holy shit.
Yeah, you can actually paint.
So I said, Jules, you know what? I think in my heart of hearts, I think it's time for me to paint. And I remember, and this is a big career decision, right? Because I'm unplugging from a very, you know, good income.
Right.
And she said, you know what? Go attack it the way I know you will, and you'll be great. And it was over.
Yep.
That was it.
And so now you're painting, you're getting into
so now I
the
said,
next career.
Well, I said, you know, Jules, you know me well enough to know this isn't like, I'm not going to paint 3 days a week and ski 2 days a week. And you know that I'm not going to want to paint at home because then it's a hobby, right? Or at least in my mind, it's a hobby.
Yeah, you needed the job aspect.
I said, you know what? I need a studio to make this legit. I need a studio to make this my place where I go every day and I immerse myself and I just frickin' lose myself in this. And I give this everything I have.
And so how often you paint how often now?
Every day.
7 days a week?
Most times 7 days a week. You know, there's the occasional weekend ski day. I do not ski during the week. My friends give me a lot of crap about that.
Right. And how many
hours? And I always tell them that is self-inflicted.
And how many hours a day do you paint?
Well, I've come to understand that my ceiling, and this is a really good lesson. You have to understand what your time is before you're hurting the painting, not helping it. My max is 6 hours of straight painting time, where I'm painting straight for 6 hours. And then even if I want to help it, even if I want to keep going, I feel like...
Yeah, you're tired.
I'm tired. And even though it's not due to effort, like the focus, just the morning energy isn't...
Well, I think it's clearly important for artists to realize what they can and can't do and how much. And you're right. You're hurting yourself if you get to a certain point and you go, I can still paint, but I'm just not doing what I should be.
I'm not.
And it shows, too.
Exactly. And so I've learned to put the brushes down when I get to that point. And I understand what that point is really well. I mean, there's the occasional day when I'll go 7.
Yeah.
And there's the other days when I go 4.
Are you finding out that you can paint faster as time has gone on, or is it still the same kind of time allotment?
It's a great question, and I've learned to work on more than one piece at a time and alternate days. So never 2 pieces on the same day. I alternate days, and I've found that really helps each piece because I come back to each piece with fresh eyes.
You can sleep on it.
Yeah, but a lot of times I do paint more efficiently. Like I think when I started, I was thinking more and painting less. And now I paint more and think less.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about how I'm going to handle something. I just start handling it. And that's a lovely thing because that doesn't just happen out of the gates. I mean, it really doesn't. And I agonize over this stuff. You know, I mean, maybe I'm telling you too much, but I'll be working on an element within a painting, and it might seem like a background element or something that is kind of not that important. And I sit there and I literally think to myself, you know, God darn it, make this the best part of the painting right now, right here, resolve this thing and make it the best thing in this whole damn painting, even though no one may even see it or care about it.
Because you care.
Do that right now on this element right now. And I do that about 1 million times a day during the painting.
Yeah, that's how you that's your process.
That's my process.
Yeah. And how long does it take you to do an average painting, would you say?
About 100 hours or more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's average.
Yeah.
There's been some that are much bigger, much larger, and some a little smaller. But, and listen, I'm a work in progress. 6 years in, I hadn't painted for 30 years. So guess what? I'm still running through doors. I'm still figuring out things. I'm still figuring out, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, stylistically. Who am I? What am I painting and why? How am I painting and why? I think I spend more time thinking about who I am as a painter than what I'm painting, if that makes any sense, because...
Yeah, you're trying to find your voice.
I'm trying to find my voice.
Or as you put it the other day, your vein.
That's right. I call it hitting the vein. And to me, what that means is... And the best example I can give is one of my truest inspirations is Georgia O'Keeffe. And I think Georgia O'Keeffe was a beautiful painter when she was living another life in New York and seeing what she saw. But when she moved to the West and she was looking through a whole different lens and a whole different heart and a whole different mind, she hit the vein, direct strike.
Yeah.
Direct strike. And she figured out on the deepest of deep levels who Georgia O'Keeffe was as a painter.
Yeah.
And when she looked at a desert flower and decided, I don't see a flower, I see a sculpture, and I'm going to paint it as a sculpture. Forget it. I mean, that was the floodgates. It was the floodgates.
Yeah.
And the floodgates opened. She had a direct strike on the vein. I think that, I don't know, this is my guess, maybe 95% of painters come close to the vein of understanding their potential, understanding who they truly are, unlike anybody else. When you get to that place where there's nobody else that can paint this except me. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I'm not there. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but
that's your goal.
I will drop dead working hard trying to figure that part out.
But I'm not sure, honestly. You might. It's hard to know. It's an interesting question. If you know when you actually hit the vein. It's a you might think you have.
Does Ed Mell know that he hit the vein? I would like to think he does.
No, I don't think so. I think Ed...
How about his collectors? His collectors...
Oh, yeah, and I do. But that's what I think and what Ed thinks are two different things.
Yeah.
See, I think Ed is always searching for that next level of inspiration and creativity. And that's why he can do things, does some figurative stuff and does flowers and does, traditional and does modern. I mean, he's pointing to an Ed Mell above me, which I like to have. I always like to have.
Which is gorgeous.
But I think that he is always looking to try to improve himself.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's true of any great artist
I think so
musician
too.
or writer. But my point is, I think that it's part luck. I think it's part luck.
But I think it's maybe part destiny. I don't know about luck because I don't really believe in luck, but destiny that you find something that inspires you enough that you want to go.
Here's a better way to say it. You make your own luck.
Yeah, I agree.
You make your own luck. So I think more about that than any other thing having to do with painting.
So I can tell you how you'll get there.
Please.
Quit thinking about it. That's exactly when it comes.
So
I think that is really true. I tried to water ski slalom forever, and I kept thinking about it. And then one day I just relaxed, and all of a sudden it came to me, and then I got extremely good very quickly. And I think to some extent,
That's cool.
To some extent, that because when you force yourself, again, I'm not an artist. I do photography, but I don't do painting. I do believe if you're pushing it what is me, what is me, what is me, what is me, that you're so concentrated on that maybe the real you doesn't have a chance to come out.
Well, let me. Can I tell you at least how I'm attempting it
Yeah, no,
to
absolutely.
hit the vein?
Yeah, I would like to know that actually.
You know, there's hundreds of artists that I like and love, but there are only a handful that are so meaningful to me, so inspiring, so everything, that I have, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, I have two lists, living, non-living
Right.
artists. And these are the ones that their work is the work I can't live without. I love them so much. I adore them so much. I'm so wowed by them, by some quality about their work.
But it's the art that you're strictly talking about, the art.
The art.
Yeah.
Well, how they see the world.
Yeah.
How they express what they see. What they see. Everything. And each one, it's a different thing. But for me, these two lists, 12 names on each list, if I see an artist that I feel should be on that list because their work is speaking to me in such a meaningful way and inspiring me in such a profound way, if I put a new name on one list, then one name has to come off. Mm-hmm. And the reason I do that is because if the list becomes too long, it becomes overwhelming for me. I consider these names, I try to pull threads from each of their names to make my own sweater.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's too many threads, I'm not able to sort out how to incorporate, or in my own way, through my own heart, through my own eyes, through my own lens, how to make what is inspiring me about their work relevant to my work without trying to copy them or be them. So if it's, oh man, I mean, I don't, if I start giving examples, we're going to be here all night. But I mean, there are things about Glenn Dean's work, mm-hmm. Maxwell Logan, Hajish, mm-hmm. Brett Allen Johnson, Kim Kogan, and others.
Ed Mell, clearly.
Ed Mell. There are threads that are really meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. And I try to pass those through my own heart and figure out what those mean for me. Mm-hmm. And if they're relevant, if they can be synthesized and come out as me.
Yeah. You're looking at it as what inspires me about these painters that I like so much, and how can I get that essence of whatever they have into my own formula?
If it's right.
Yeah.
For me.
Right. Well, you'll know.
Because that's even another question.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not right. It's forced.
Yeah.
So, as I create my first body of work in these first 6 years, there have been these moments, like in the painting I did that was acquired by the state of Utah for the permanent collection, the High West High painting. I just kind of came pouring out of me, but the way I treated that landscape and the shadows and the colors and the kind of transitions within the colors and the composition, and just every part of that painting felt like, of all the paintings I've done, I would say that one, there are others, but that one seemed to just come pouring out of me.
Yeah, you hit the vein. Even if it was a side hit, you felt like you got something right there.
I must have nicked it.
Yeah,
because
made a nice hematoma.
So there have been these moments where I've realized, okay, this zone feels really good to me.
Yeah.
But then I had this other conundrum, which was I'm a new painter, and so subject matter wise, I haven't run through enough doors.
Well, I think that's right.
To know which subject matter I should be. If I decide that these illuminated structures that I've done are my thing, and they might be, mm-hmm. but my point is, if I just get locked and loaded on that and don't run through any other doors, am I missing something that I don't want to miss?
Right. Well, I think you have to run through the doors.
And so I am running through them.
And then the question comes, when you run through those doors and you produce something and you are very pleased with it, but it doesn't sell, then what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
I think about it
that's
a lot.
That's a tough question for any artist. You feel like you're really making great work, but it really hasn't found an audience. Do you continue? I don't know the answer to that, honestly.
Well, and so I have, the way I'm handling it is, my first series was the Chelsea Light series that you saw, and there were reasons why I did that, and I loved painting those. Those were a labor of love, and I think they are, because it was my first series, I feel largely that is very much who I am as a painter.
Yeah, I would think that's probably right.
Right, and so then I went to landscape and did the Western Therapy series, which had success. And it was a challenge on many levels for me, because now all of a sudden I'm not doing these stairwells and hallways of post-war New
Right.
York gallery district buildings. I'm doing landscapes, and I'm doing red rock bluffs and plateaus and horses and cars and motorcycles within landscapes. So there's a human element,
Right.
which is another conversation.
Well, and you're being successful. I mean, you've already got at least one painting in the Booth Museum, their permanent collection. You're showing at Altamira. You're showing, occasionally at Diane Stewart's Modern West. I mean, you're making inroads very quickly, because we kind of make it sound like you're not, but you truly, actually, for 6 years of painting, you've made some fairly significant jumps, I think.
Well, thank you.
in quick
And
fashion.
listen, I mean, some beautiful things have happened, things that I would have never predicted. I'm just worried. I'm just trying to figure out who I am as a painter and paint as well as I possibly can and leave nothing on the field.
Yeah, that's the key.
And that's all I try to do. And then if other, I always tell people the best thing about becoming a painter, they're like, well, do you just love going in and painting every day? And of course I do. Yes, absolutely. Large capital letters underline, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that's even lovelier than that is the bendy, twisty, windy road, and not knowing what's around every bend, but trusting that if I work hard enough and if I put in the work, that those things that will reveal themselves are good things, and I trust in the journey.
Yeah.
And so I mean that with all my heart. I trust the journey.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly where we need to end. We trust the journey, and we're going to be very interested to see what you produce, Kevin Kehoe. I have a feeling we're going to see some very full-veined paintings coming soon from you.
I sure hope so, because
Yeah.
I spent enough time thinking about it.
Yeah.
And,
Now it's time to quit thinking. Trust me on that one. Let it flow. And yeah, you're going to be successful. You already are successful in many ways. It was a pleasure having you on today. And
well, I'm honored, and I loved seeing the gallery and meeting you and talking yesterday and today.
Yeah,
And
it's fun.
I'm just really honored, and can't thank you enough for giving me this chance to tell part of my story.
I think it's important. I think it's important not only for yourself, but I think it's important for other artists out there that go, I'm too old. I can't do this. I always wanted to do it. I just can't. Well, you can.
You can.
But you just got to be brave.
You can.
And you got to jump off the end and, assume you're going to hit the bottom at some point.
Can I leave with two thoughts on that?
Sure.
The fear thing, I'm too old, or I'm 50, or it's too late, or whatever. I mean, my biggest reason for doing this was I never wanted to get to an age where I had to wonder what if.
Yeah.
That would have been a huge regret in my life.
Yeah.
And Julie knew that. So this journey that we're on, we are on it together as a family, and we share it all together, which is a beautiful thing. That's probably the most lovely thing about the whole painting thing.
Yeah.
And sharing this, it's a way for me to teach my daughter, Kate, some important life lessons like follow through and not being multitasking is not necessarily a good thing. Being focused on something and loving it with all of your heart.
Yeah.
So,
Committed.
the fear thing, I have a saying for that. It's called, my words for that is run at the train, not from it.
Mm-hmm.
Run at it twice as fast as it's coming at you.
Yeah. Just remember, don't hit it head on, though.
No, I mean,
Jump off right at the end.
Intellectually and emotionally,
Yeah.
hit it head on.
Yeah.
And hit it hard.
Don't be afraid.
Hit it hard.
Yeah.
And the other, I have a quote on my studio door that is really my favorite quote in life. It's a Buddha quote, and the quote is, your job in life. Your job is to discover your world, and then with all of your heart give yourself to it. Your job is to discover your world, and then with all of your heart, give yourself to it. That's my favorite quote.
Now, it seems like you found it, and I know I have. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
We'll see lots of you in the future, I have no doubt.
Thank you for that vote of confidence.
Excellent. We'll
All
talk
right.
soon.